Greetings, class. My name is Frank Donnelly. I am the Geospatial Data Librarian at Baruch College, CUNY. And in this presentation, I'm going to demonstrate how you can use and create web-based maps for exploring and understanding different neighborhoods. First, we'll start off by showing you ArcGIS Online, which is an application you can use for making interactive web maps of a neighborhood. And I'll spend most of the time on this application, start to do the demo. But before we get to the demonstration, I wanted to begin with some conceptual background. So for this assignment, you'll be exploring and describing particular neighborhoods, and there are many theories about this and methods for doing it. I'm going to talk about just one in particular to get you started. So Kevin Lynch was an urban planner who wrote this book, Image of the City, back in 1960. Within urban planning and human geography, it's considered to be a seminal work that helped lay the foundation for understanding how people perceive and navigate urban environments. In particular, it helped establish the idea of mental mapping. This essential concept of mental maps is that in our minds we've established a framework of how places in our lives are organized and connected, and we use these maps in our minds on both a conscious and unconscious level to understand and navigate our world and just generally to understand it. For example, our concept and understanding of a city like New York is influenced by where we live and the places that we typically go to, and therefore we're each going to have different impressions and mental maps of the city. But while our maps of the same place may be different, the aspects that we use for organizing and processing places is something that we hold in common. So in this book, Lynch explored 3 different cities: Boston, Jersey City, and Los Angeles. And he visited these places, explored and documented the landscape, and he interviewed many residents. He asked people to describe their neighborhoods, what they were like, how they interact with places within their neighborhood, how they get from one place to another, and generally how they felt about certain places and why. And in doing this, he was able to identify physical aspects or elements of cities that people use to construct their mental maps of their environments. So Lynch came up ultimately with 5 elements, and here they are. The first one are paths, which are defined as routes along which a person travels and observes the city, and from which the rest of the elements are arranged. So you can think of a path as a sidewalk or a street or a path through a park, any network or linear route or element that we can travel and walk along. Paths are important because they're the element that we basically are on a path, and we use that element to view the rest of the city from the paths that we travel. Then there are edges. These are also linear elements, but they're not paths. They're not considered as paths by the observer. Instead, they're boundaries or breaks in the landscape. So this could be something like a fence or a wall. It could be a body of water that separates 2 places. It could even be something like a road or a highway. This is important because one person's path could be another person's edge. So if you think about a big road or a busy road like Queens Boulevard, for example, for some people that'll be a route for which they travel through the neighborhood, but for other people that's an edge. It's a significant barrier that people often, if they're on foot, don't want to cross, either because physically it's difficult or undesirable or even dangerous, or even beyond physically, just mentally, it's a barrier. So if you think of a place like a highway that goes through a neighborhood, even if you can walk under it, you don't really want to because it's kind of unpleasant. So it forms a physical and also kind of a psychological barrier. And then the edges essentially it can be used to define the differences between different places, basically where one place begins and the next ends. A district is an area. These are medium to large sections of the city that share some identifiable characteristics and in which a person moves into and out of. So we can think of a district as being a place that has similar characteristics. They can be physical, like it has similar architecture or similar land use, or it could be based on any number of things, the people that live there, or just it's within the distance of where you live or work, and it's the area in which you interact. Nodes are points in the city that an observer can enter. They can be junctions, crossings, or simply concentrations of activity. So for example, near Baruch College, you can think of a place like maybe Madison Square Park as a node. It's a place where many roads and paths come together, and a lot of people move in and out of it, and there's often a concentration of people there. That's in contrast to another point called a landmark. A landmark is an identifiable physical object that an observer typically does not enter into, but it serves as kind of a point of reference. So you could think of, for example, the Empire State Building is a landmark. It's something that you can see in the distance, and then you could use it to orient where you are. And once again, one person's node might be another person's landmark. So for some people, Times Square might be a node because it's a strategic point that they enter into and out of. But for other people like me who hate Times Square and never ever want to go there, for me it's not a node, but it is more of a landmark, and that if you can see it, if looking up 7th Avenue, you can see where it is, and it basically is an element that identifies kind of where you are or where things are. The reason that I'm showing you this is because we can use modern mapping software to create or highlight these elements of urban neighborhoods in order to describe and understand them in a similar way that Lynch did with pen and ink and paper maps. It might be helpful for you to sketch your neighborhood on paper and highlight the features that are relevant to you and other residents, and then you can transform this knowledge to a digital map like this one. So mapping software allows us to create points, lines, and areas that can represent the different elements and make them interactive. So in this example, I've created an interactive map of my neighborhood. I live in Inwood at the top of Manhattan, and I've used ArcGIS Online to create this map, which is basically what we're going to do for most of this tutorial. Let me just click on the link and I'll show you. So using ArcGIS Online, I was able to select a base map. The base map is essentially just the canvas on which all of your other layers are placed. So I chose a base map that shows us parks and roads and various shapes of buildings. And then I was able, using that canvas, to create elements of my own. So I have various points here, which I've indicated using like different color push pins. So I think, for example, the blue push pins, if I click on it, there's the Indian Road Cafe. So these are maybe the blue push pins are places where I often hang out. This is another tavern. Whereas the green push pins represent, in this case, stores. There's Manny's Drugstore. So I was able to put these different points in, and then we can see there are also some different linear elements. These are lines that I drew. So if I click on this blue line, this is a particular path that I often take walking to get to the A train, to get the subway, and we can also see that the subway stations are marked down here. In this case, I didn't add the subway stations by hand, but they were a layer that existed within ArcGIS Online that I was able to add to my map. So I have these different lines. This label here is a label that I placed here. It wasn't part of the base map, but it kind of identifies this general area. I was also able to draw a shape. But this is essentially kind of like a mental map visualized of my neighborhood. Inwood is a big neighborhood, but I live in a particular place, and there are particular paths that I follow and particular areas that I tend to go to more often than other areas. Although sometimes I'll wander far away to go down here to the Pizza Palace, because that's definitely the best pizza in the neighborhood. So you can see this is the general idea that you can basically create these shapes to build your own maps. So that's what we're going to do next. I'm going to demonstrate how you can use this tool. To get started, the place that you want to go, there's a company called ESRI or ESRI, and they make a whole suite of geographic information systems software. GIS is used for basically doing geospatial analysis and making maps. ArcGIS is one of their premier products, and ArcGIS Online is an online version of it. So to get started, you would go to arcgis.com/home. Okay, so yes, when you first come to the page, if you're not signed in already, there's a sign up now link here at the bottom, which we can click, and then it'll ask you for a login. But if you don't have a login yet, down here where it says no account, you can click a link to create an account, and then it'll bring you to this page. There are several different accounts that you can have. The one that you're going to create is this free one, create a ArcGIS public account. And then when you're on here, you just fill out your basic information, and then when you click next, it will also give you the option of basically doing a quick sign-in, or you can use these quick sign-ins down here if you have GitHub, Facebook, or Google to basically log in and create your account. So if you don't have an account, go ahead and do that. Okay, once you have an account and you're signed in order to get to the map making page, you can either come down here to where it says Make a Map, or you can come up to the top of the screen here where it says Map and click, and that will bring you into this map making screen. I should pause here and say, incidentally, as I mentioned, that I have created a tutorial, and I'm basically going to walk through this in the video, parts of it. But if you want a document to refer back to, ArcGIS Online Fundamental Tasks, you can this should be attached to this video, but if it's not, if you do a Google search for this in Baruch, it will turn up. It's posted on the college's GIS webpage. Okay, so when you get into ArcGIS, you have your first map here, and you can either zoom into the area that you're interested in making a map of by, if you hold down the left mouse button, you can basically drag the map around. If you have a mouse, you can use the scroll bar to go in or out, or you can use these plus symbols. Or if you wanted to get someplace fast, you can type in an address and it'll zoom into that address for you. But I'm just going to zoom in here to New York really quick. And notice as I zoom in that the map changes. It becomes, at this level, the closer we get, the more details we have. And we can see the detailed outlines of the streets, and we start to see parks, and there are a bunch of subway stations. So I'm just going to get a little closer to where Baruch College is located. And here we are. 2nd Avenue, there's the Newman Vertical Campus. So this base map, though, is something that we can change. So over here on the left, we have this base map link. If I click on that, I can change this to a different looking map. So here's one for navigation that looks a little bit different and kind of highlights the streets a little bit more. Or there's one for not as relevant in the city, but there's a topographic one. But you get the idea. There's an OpenStreetMap version. There's a community map. These are just basically different ways for styling the background. So you can experiment and choose one that you like, but also make sure whatever you choose isn't going to conflict with whatever you're going to create. Now, even though we haven't really done anything yet, it's important to, as you're doing your map, to save often. So up here there's a save button. If I click on that, we've never saved this map yet, so we have to do save as. And in order to save it, we have to give it a title. And you always have to add at least one tag, so I'm just going to do something simple like New York City. Summary you don't have to type in, and then this is your user folder on ArcGIS Online, so I'm going to say Save Map. And now my map has been saved. Just for the sake of argument, if you leave ArcGIS and then you want to come back and get to the maps that you've created, how do you do that? In order to get back to things that you've already created, if you land on the ArcGIS homepage, what you would do is you would log in, and then you would come up here to this Content button. And then under Content, it's going to list all of the maps or applications that you've ever created. There's the map that we're working on right now, so I could click on that and it would reopen my map again. Alternatively, if you came back up here and you just said make a new map, that'll get you back into this map making screen again. And then from the map making screen, you could go up to the ArcGIS drop down and choose Content, and then you'll see that list of maps again. So once you've saved a map and left the program, that's how you can get back to it. Log in and get to the Content button. Alright, let's add our first element to this map. So I'm going to come over here and I'm going to hit the Add button up here at the top. And I'm going to choose an option. If we want to actually put something on the map like a point or a line or an area, that's considered a map note. So I'm going to go up to Add and say Add Map Notes. And I'm going to give this a name like my landmarks, and I'm going to say create, and then I have a bunch of options here. These are kind of like the general ones for doing a push pin or writing text or drawing lines. So if I just want to do a simple push pin, I can come here and put a push pin over here, and I can say this is going to be the Newman Vertical Campus. And then down here there's a description. This is Baruch College, CUNY. And notice if you wanted to, you can even put an image in here. Like if we wanted to actually show an image of the college. To do that, all we'd have to do is if I hop out here and I do a quick web search for Baruch Newman Vertical Campus. You can use Google. I prefer to use DuckDuckGo. I'll go here to the images. There's a bunch of images of the VC. The important thing is I just have to view the file and get the actual link to the image. And then I can come back here and paste this into the image link. Actually, yes, image URL field. There we go. Close that. And now, right now, I'm in this edit mode. So if I click on this, it will allow me to basically edit that point that I've inserted. But if I get away from the edit mode and I go into something like details, now if I click on the button, it'll actually display it the way that most map users would see it. So pretty cool, right? We've been able just to add a push pin, and there we have our first feature. If you're not happy with the boring green push pin, you can actually change the symbols a little bit. Where I wanted to go, sorry about that. Okay, if I wanted to edit one of these symbols, like let's say I want to change this push pin and make it a different color or symbol, all I have to do is, if I'm in the edit mode here, I can basically just click on the push pin, and then there's an option here that says change symbol. And if I do that, I have all of these different symbols. It gives me kind of these generic shapes. Or if I use the drop down here, I have a bunch of other possibilities that I can choose from. If like points of interest, for example, that gives me a bunch of different kinds of labels. Basic will give me basically different colored push pins or flags or circles or something else. So if I wanted to change this to like a red style push pin, I could say OK. I also have the ability to make the push pin bigger or smaller using the slider box down here. So I can say OK and close, and there we have it. So when you're creating these features, now that we're in an edit mode and we're within the we're specifically editing the My Landmarks feature, you can put many different push pins in here to symbolize different things. Or if you went up here and added a new map note, you can create a completely different series of features. So let's say we're going to draw some lines. If I go up to add map notes, I can say these are going to be my lines. Come up with a better name than this, but this is just an example. And now I have two different kinds of lines that I can choose from. The first option is a little bit easier because it basically allows us to click and then click and then double click to complete, and then I can say that this is my path. Once again, you can put in a description. If it was relevant, you can go out and paste an image in here. And if you wanted to change the symbol, hitting the change symbol here, you can change the pattern of the line to make it dotted or pointed. You can change the color. You can change how thick the line is. So you have a lot of different options to choose from. And there you have that line. I'm not going to show you all of these, but by adding the map notes, you have a bunch of different options that you can choose from. There are different templates, and by checking any one of these, you can do points, lines, areas, or you can just insert text, which will just sit on top of the map as kind of like a label. All right. If you wanted to measure area or distances, there is a place to do that up here. So if I wanted to see how long that line is that I just drew, let me go back to details and get rid of that. If I go up to measure, you can measure an area or you can measure an actual line. And with this, I can just kind of click through, and that tells me that this is 0.21 miles. You can also use that to measure areas or to get the coordinates of a specific point. So that's really it in terms of adding your own features. But in some cases, that might be kind of a pain. If it's fine if you're customizing an area for a neighborhood and you're inserting things manually, but let's say you wanted to show, I don't know, all of the fire stations in the city. It would be kind of, tedious to have to go and put them all in there by hand. The good news is that you don't have to. ArcGIS Online has a lot of pre-existing content. To find it, what we would do is if we go up to the Add button, instead of adding a map note, which is what we were doing before, we can browse this Living Atlas. The Living Atlas is a collection of curated layers that ArcGIS Online has added for us to use. If I type in fire stations, do a search, then there are all kinds of fire stations that come up here. Let's see. Well, we obviously, some of these don't really match what we're interested in. And this has also changed since I've written the tutorial because the layer that I used before is not here. Let's see what this one looks like. This is fire stations within the city of Cape Town in South Africa, so that's not going to help us. What other options do we have? What's CCT buildings? Also Cape Town. OpenStreetMap. Let's add that. Well, that's given us a lot of different stuff. So that's basically all of the different kinds of amenities that are available in the OpenStreetMap. Okay, so this is what we're going to do instead. Let me go back to the details here. The OpenStreetMap is kind of overkill because it's added all kinds of different things besides just fire stations. So I'm going to go here and click on that, and I'm going to say remove. And instead, we're going to go back to add, and instead of we'll browse the Living Atlas again. Well, another way to think about this is we just have to kind of think of other terms that we can use to see if we can find what we're looking for. So, for example, if I say, let's browse the Living Atlas one more time. Let's say I was interested in police stations. If I type in law enforcement, then that gives us a bunch of, here's local law enforcement locations. If I click on that, it'll give me some information about what this is. And then I can add it to the map. And that looked like that worked. So now I have, police stations there. It gives it a styling by default, but if I wanted to change that, instead of just showing the little PD symbol, what we could do is, if we come back to the details here, there's the local law enforcement locations. And as I hover over it, since it's a layer that I was adding from somewhere else, we have a bunch of options here to, for example, change the style with these little shapes. If I click on that, I can say just show the location, and we'll show this as just an individual symbol. But if I want to change that, I can click on the symbol, and now this gets us back to our symbol window again that we saw earlier. I think in the drop down there was something here for public safety, and then here are all of these different icons that we can choose from. So like here's another one for police, for example, and I can also make it bigger, and there we go. If I click on any one of the points, it gives me this information about this particular police station that the provider of the data has given us. In addition to looking at the data this way, point by point, we can also look at all of the information simultaneously in a table. If we go back to the details and then we go down to this law enforcement option, if I click on the little table, this is going to show me all of the different police stations that are in this data set, which in this case covers the entire United States. So those are your options. So you can see how you can basically use map notes to add your own layers, and then with some artful searching through the Living Atlas or through the ArcGIS Online repository, you can try different keyword searches in here and see if you can find existing layers in this repository, and then you can add them to your map and then style them any way that you like. Although this isn't something that you're probably going to do for the project that you're going to do, you can also, just to show you, in addition to making reference maps, you can make thematic maps with ArcGIS Online as well. Under this, I'm going to say community health profiles. Actually, that should be New York community health profiles. And there is a health profiles layer that was added by the city's health department. I'll add that to the map. Close this. And then if we zoom out a little bit, we can see basically all the different health districts. It's basically drawn these boundaries for us. And if we want to style the health districts, we can come over here and go to the Style tab. We can show the specific location, basically just showing the outlines of the districts, or there are, in this particular data set, there are all of these different values that have been associated with each area. So if we were to open the table for this, we would see all of these columns that show various aspects of health in this particular area. We should really go and look up in the data set itself and see what all of these definitions are. But for example, if we wanted to see how places rank in poverty, for example, or just an overall poverty measure, we can choose the specific attribute here, and then we can choose to show this as a particular color scheme or style. And then this shows us, in this case, how places rank in poverty as kind of a thematic shaded area map. And obviously, at some point, if you were doing this and didn't want to show the police stations, for example, you just click and turn them off temporarily. So that's a basic run through of how ArcGIS Online works. Always remember to save. And if you want to make this map public so that you can share it with somebody else, you have to hit the share button here at the top. And right now the map is private, but if we click this checkbox here to share it with everybody, then you have a few options. You can basically send people or the professor this link, and then they're going to be able to open the map, and they will see the last place where you zoomed, all the layers that you've added, all the styling that you've added, and then you can even automatically share the map on Facebook and Twitter. Or if you have a website, you can basically click on the embed website, copy this information, and then paste it into the website. So for example, if you had a WordPress site, you could paste this information in there, and then it would embed your map in the WordPress site. So if you're wondering, how does all of that actually work? I have just a couple slides here that we'll step back to. The way that ArcGIS Online and all geographic information systems, GIS, which is a set of software packages and applications for working with geospatial data, The way that these systems work is that these files are not simple drawings that were made in a graphic design package. These are geographic features that are represented by individual files or layers that you can add to a map. So you can have a file for police stations, a file for health districts, a file for roads. These are basically the raw materials that you can use for analysis and map making, and you bring them into the software and then you can overlay them to make maps. The reason that you can overlay them is that each of the layers is geo-referenced, which means that they are all drawn using a specific map projection and coordinate system so that these places are affiliated or are firmly attached to real places on the Earth. Just like you would see a paper map in a book or on a poster that's drawn to a specific scale and map projection, all of the GIS files are drawn that way too. So that, for example, if we moused over Hawaii, we would actually see the longitude and latitude coordinates for Hawaii. So these layers are not just drawings, but they're actually tied to real places on the Earth with coordinates. Since these reference systems are all standardized, geospatial data can easily be shared as long as all the files are using the same standard. And if they're not, then the GIS can basically convert them from one standard to the other so that you can overlay them. I work with a lot of desktop GIS software. This is a screenshot of Qgis, which is a free open source package for doing spatial analysis and for making maps. And the software basically acts as an interface or a window for viewing all of these different files and working with them. So just like ArcGIS Online, you can add things to the software, overlay them, symbolize them, and show them differently. With a web mapping platform like ArcGIS Online, the principle is the same. You have the static base map that you basically choose, and that has a specific coordinate system associated with it, and then you're able to layer all these layers on top of one another and embed them in the map. Video that I put together which demonstrates that more fully. Alright, that's it. Good luck with your maps. That's the GIS lab where I work in the Newman Vertical, not in the Newman Vertical campus, but across the street in the technology building. Unfortunately, the lab's not open right now, but if you have any questions, you're welcome to send me an email. Basic things I can answer through email, or if you want to walk through anything, you can make an appointment and then we can use Zoom or WebEx. That's it. Good luck with your projects.